Good morning, everybody. Today I'm going to be explaining the Zenzele unit mini project, which is a monologue. So first, let's go ahead and find it in our Canvas course. Today I will be linking it in the daily directions, but I haven't posted that yet, so I'm going to show you how you might want to find it on like a regular basis. So to do that, you're just going to go over to the modules, and you're going to scroll down to the Zenzele module, and you can find the Zenzele mini project right here. I do have a number of examples, which I will come back to, but just be aware that you can find all of this stuff for the mini project right here in the module. So let's go ahead and open this up. So what you see here is the project handout. This is what you would have gotten if I were to hand out paper versions of this in class. But you don't need to do anything with this document. There is a template that you will use, but this document itself you will not do anything with. So it says, Zenzele, a letter for my daughter, monologue mini project. In Zenzele, Jane Ozipo Moreira's character Shiri is desperate for her daughter to not forget her roots in rural Zimbabwe as she heads off to college in the United States. Because of this, she writes a letter to Zenzele which portrays many aspects of life in Zimbabwe and perspectives of the people who live in its rural and urban areas. For this unit's mini project, you will be working individually to research, produce, and deliver a monologue from the perspective of a character in the book, a historical figure who probably influenced Moreira's writing of this book, or an object, force, or conflict. So you have kind of a wide variety of perspectives that you could choose to write from. No matter what perspective you choose to write and speak from, you will embody the ideas presented in this unit's anchor text, Zenzele, a letter for my daughter. So, product. So what you're actually going to be creating is a monologue in a document that I have created for you. So if you click this template, you will be taken to a template preview link of the document that you'll be typing in. Please use this document. Do not create a document on your own. This is what I'm looking for. So in it, it's really basic, but it just says like the title of the project, your name, what perspective you've chosen, and then it gives you a place to type your script. The last thing in here is an area for your works cited list. And then I did give you a link to the Purdue OWL because you will have to format your sources in MLA. And if you are unfamiliar with doing so, this is a really, really nice resource to help. So that's where you're going to type your document. So back to the perspective options. The idea behind this project is really to get you to step into the shoes of someone or something, much like Shiri is attempting to do as she tries to understand her daughter's decisions and kind of where she's coming from as someone who's grown up after the revolution, after the fight for independence, and after Zimbabwe becomes Zimbabwe. So that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to step into someone or something else's shoes. So your perspective choices are a character from the book, can be Zenzele, Shiri, Linda, Tanawo, any number of characters that you find interesting in the book. You could also choose to write from the perspective of a historical figure who probably in some way influenced Moreira's writing of this book. You guys looked at a bunch of resources in the historical context text set earlier this week, and those would all be amazing choices. And I think sometimes when you're looking at people like Ian Smith, or somebody whose ideals you personally do not align with, I think that almost makes for a more interesting monologue because you're really, really having to delve into that perspective and figure out how to adopt their mindset and like speak as though you were them. So that's a really interesting way to go about this. My one caveat to this project is that you cannot do Nelson Mandela. Though we do look at South Africa quite a bit in this unit, comparatively to what was going on in Zimbabwe at the time, I don't allow students to use Nelson Mandela for this project because Our unit media focuses on him, so you're going to get plenty of exposure to his story. And also, there's just so much information online about Nelson Mandela, and the students who've chosen Mandela in the past tend to plagiarize. So I'm just kind of taking that off the table. So the third option that you could choose is to write from the perspective of an object, force, or conflict. These project choices tend to be the most creative and the most interesting from an audience perspective. So some examples of an object would be like a pass, like someone who is Black in Zimbabwe would often have to carry a pass, kind of like a passport or like a license or some sort of identification to show who they were. Students in the past have written from the perspective of a whites only sign. Other students have done like a brochure that Zenzele is looking at when she's considering colleges. Lots of objects you could choose. Another way you could do this is by writing from the perspective of a force. And what I mean by that is an abstract idea like prejudice or racism or injustice or empathy would be a good one. So any kind of abstract force or conflict, those are kind of go hand in hand. So this perspective option, object, force, or conflict, tends to be the most abstract, the most interesting, the most interpretive of the three. So those are your three options. So a character from the book, a historical figure, or an object, force, or conflict. Again, no matter what perspective you choose to write from, you must identify conflicts and possible solutions. And that is going to seem super, super vague to you at this point until you choose your perspective. And what that looks like is going to differ based on what you choose. So your conflicts and solutions may not look like the person who's sitting next to you, what they've chosen to write about. So if you need clarification on this one particular part of the project, please let me know. And then I can help you. You do need to include at least 2 direct quotes from the book with proper MLA citations in the script. And then I ask that you highlight your quotes. What I mean by seamlessly is a little tricky, and you'll kind of get what I mean when you look at the examples. But when you're writing your script, you are going to adopt that quote as your own, as though the person whose perspective you're speaking from is saying that quote from the book. It's kind of a unique way to use the quotes, but it ends up being really cool the way that they turn out. So you're not going to say things like, as Maria writes in the book. You're just going to go ahead and seamlessly weave that quote in. And then you're not going to tell us, oh, this was from page 79, or as Maria writes, or Maria says this. So there's none of that. And that will become more clear once you look at the examples. You also need to include at least one original extended metaphor. You have no idea what that means at this point, but we are going to be doing an activity where you're practicing writing these, and you'll also be identifying some within the book. So don't worry about that quite yet. You will have a solid understanding of what that means by the time you probably start working on this. Again, you do need to include a works cited page with at least 4 outside sources that informed the writing of your monologue. The purpose of looking at outside sources is, to get that information so that you know how to write from that perspective. Credible sources can be anything that inform your understanding. So it could be a documentary, it could be an article online, it could be a YouTube video, it could be an infographic, it could be a book. It doesn't matter. So long as it's informing your writing. So 4 outside sources. 2 of those sources have to come from the Arrowhead databases. And if you need help with how to use the databases, please ask me. Part of my job as a tech integrator is to really know the ins and outs of those databases. So I'm more than happy to maybe point you in the right direction. I also tried to give you some solid examples with the text set resources that you guys looked at. earlier in the week. All of those resources that you dug through came from our databases at Arrowhead. So ABC Clio, lots of stuff. So in addition to your 4 sources in your works cited list, you also need to include one for the book since you're quoting it directly. So that's a minimum of 5 sources total. Please do not put sources in your list that come from places where you found quotes for the book. I know that sometimes kids use Goodreads and Wikipedia and whatever to get quotes from books, but please, that does not count as one of your sources because that's not informing your writing. It's just you trying to get out of citing the book properly. So Wikipedia and like Goodreads and stuff like that, book regs, that kind of thing, that does not count toward your 5 sources. Okay, so once you've finished writing this thing, you will be delivering your monologue to the class, either in person or via Zoom, depending on what's going on that week. Your delivery needs to be between 2 to 3 minutes long. I'm not a huge stickler for kids who go over that 3 minutes. Like, that's not a big deal to me. If you want to write more and like really dive in, cool, great, wonderful. It's the ones that are below 2 minutes that tend to be underdeveloped, under-researched. They're not quite hitting the mark. So shoot for 2 to 3 minutes. And if you go over, no big deal. You absolutely may have your script with you during your presentation, but I urge you to use it as a reminder and not a crutch. You should not be reading directly off it for the entire time, and you will lose points for lack of eye contact. So I do want you to practice and make sure that you know your script well so that you're not like holding it in front of your face and like we can't hear you and you're just stumbling and it's no fun for anybody. So please practice. If you are an in-person learner, I ask that you have a printed copy of your script instead of having your laptop in front of you on the podium. That's just for, I just feel like it's less distracting and a bit more professional to have paper in front of you instead of your laptop. And then it's also really nice for me because you'll just hand me your script after you're done delivering, and then I can just put it right with your paper rubric. So make sure that you're also using voice inflection, tone, pauses. Please don't be monotonous and try your best to be creative. You'll have plenty of time to draft this thing and practice. So I do expect that you're using that time to really dig in and explore the perspective. What you're turning in Canvas is the URL to your template document. You can see that here. This is a formative assessment. It's a mini project, so it's worth 30 points in the grade book. And then, okay, timeline. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me just back up. So the rubric is in here, and this is exactly what I'll be using to grade you. So feel free to dig through this and make sure that you know exactly what I'm looking at when you are delivering and when I'm going back to grade. Okay, let's talk about calendar. So our timeline, and you always have access to this calendar in Canvas. It's a layer that you can, tick on and tick off. So we are, currently as I'm recording this, we are on the 14th. But tomorrow when you are watching this video, it will be the 15th, and I'm introducing it to you. And then you have quite a long time to work on this. On the 20th next week, that's when we're going to be looking into the extended metaphor idea and really practicing that. And so you'll get that pretty soon so that you can incorporate that within your monologue. And then it's quite a while and already into November by the time you need to have this thing like really wrapped up and ready to deliver. So on Wednesday, the 4th of November, I'm going to give you some reminders about the monologue. I'm going to give you a little pep talk about speaking with conviction, show you a video, and then you'll have the 6th, and I'm actually not sure if the school board approved our asynchronous days for the rest of the semester. I think that's an asynchronous day, but that will be a day for you to really polish your monologue, wrap up. It'll be kind of considered your work day. And then we start delivering monologues on the 11th of November. That's a Wednesday. And during this time also, like, we'll be doing our seminars and our unit tests, and we'll be starting the media. And then we don't start delivering monologues until after we finish the movie for this unit. So you do have quite a bit of time to draft this thing out, prepare, and get ready. So that's pretty much all I have to tell you. Oh, examples. So if you go back to the modules and you go down to the Zenzele module, I included 5 examples from previous students. None of these is perfect, so don't like use them as Bible, but just know that you can kind of come here for some ideas. I chose specific examples that kind of like push the envelope in terms of like creativity and things like that. So I'm just going to kind of show you what I mean by like highlighting. So this person highlighted her quotes here for me so that it's really, really easy for me to find them. You wouldn't believe sometimes students don't use quotation marks. They don't put the parenthetical citation in here. And so it's really hard for me sometimes to like actually identify what your quotes are. So that's why the highlighting is really helpful for me as a grader. So the quotes are highlighted. This is her extended metaphor. Even though we practice, it can be challenging for some students because it is kind of like higher level thinking. It's abstract. So if you need some examples, please look through these examples that I posted and pay attention to their extended metaphors. And then you'll notice too that these writers just include their quotes seamlessly. So if I am the speaker, I'm going to say, I am a source of violent power. As you envision me, you bring yourself close to the door between worlds. You can see what others cannot, and this is a power you must cherish and use wisely. You have the ability to create the world that you wish to live in. Nothing is fixed for you. And notice how I didn't like introduce the quote. I didn't say the parenthetical citation. I'm just kind of like adopting those words as though they were my own from my chosen perspective. So if that makes sense to you, great. If not, make sure that you do spend some time looking through those examples so that you know what I'm talking about. Since you have so long to work on this, please reach out to me if you have questions, if you want me to look anything over, if you just want me to point you in a different direction. Like, all of it is great. I'm more than happy to work with you because this is a rather challenging project and one that is going to stretch you creatively. So that is the mini project.